Okay. Maseches Basra daf. Now we in Kuf Samich Aleph Amud Beis. But in the first 5 minutes of the shir, before we start, in other words, the next today's material, before we go on, I would not do halacha today because, again, the halacha here, it's all intertwined. We can only chop the beginning of the Shulchan Aruch there, which I did learn yesterday. After only tomorrow, we can get enough information from the Gemara to start the Shulchan Aruch. And therefore, we'll just do very necessary chazara on yesterday, like a summary of yesterday. I think that's in place. I would do it Baal Peh, with your permission. Yeah, you can, glance yourselves. Kuf Samech Amud Beis, we saw machloikes between two Amoraim. We saw Rav Huna and Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba regarding where are the Eidim signing. Rav Huna said that they sign here, show and tell, up here, that the Eidim of Get Mekusha, not regular Get. Get Mekusha has all its idiosyncrasies. One of it is that the Eidim sign in the top, between the lines, or in the back on the actual folds or loops, okay? Not inside, that was rejected. Very nice. So that's on top. Frag the Gemara of us. People here in the bottom of the page can write anything that they feel like, and the ADM already did their job over here. You have a lot of free space here, which is dangerous, invitation for danger. And therefore we said, no, they have to write up there, right after the text that the ADM relate to, they have to write V'hakol shalil v'kayim. Hakol shalil v'kayim means end of story, that's, point of no return, Gamarnu. Yeah, that's a kol shalil v'kayam. It's all shalil v'kayam. It's all set and not nothing further to discuss, and therefore, okay, whatever. Then we say that because it says shalil v'kayam, it's point of no return. Maybe for Gemara, maybe you'll erase the shalil v'kayam, write a lot of other stuff, and write shalil v'kayam again. Against that, we have a very, very strong security system. If you see anything that could be, would have been shalil v'kayim, mitzad the size and the location, and it's erased, and then there's another shalil v'kayim there. There is a shalil v'kayim in the bottom, and there's something that could have been erased over here in the top that could have been shalil v'kayim. Treif, pasul, don't you throw the star into the garbage. So that's Rav Huna. Then we spoke about Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba. Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, which was the second opinion, Kuf Samech Aleph Amud Aleph. Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba said where the Eidim signed in the bottom, in the back. Where are they signed? All the way, they start from the bottom, and their chasimas go up. They sort of climb up the star. So for sure, we know that they saw everything all the way down to the bottom. Whoopa! Here they're starting to sign here. So this cannot be forged yet, because the assumption is that's the way it works. The Eidim sign on stuff that they saw in where the signatures are located. So they know what's written in the bottom. The bottom is always the most dangerous area. Yeah, that's sort of like, the danger zone. And if they're signed right from the bottom, then it's okay. Because they saw the back, they saw the bottom of the front, and they're signing on the back, corresponding in the area corresponding to it. Then, okay, we said, what about the option that he may take scissors and cut? He may cut the name. He'll cut really not the true. He's going to cut the front because maybe the last line is something to his detriment. Maybe the last line not ziyuf, really. It says at the end of the shar that he'll only divorce her. She gives him $10,000. She doesn't want that, let's say. She gets the get. Maybe she'll cut it, or the buyer, the seller would cut the bottom line. And what's going to be on the other side? In the bottom, the word Reuven would be erased. We said no. Reuven ben is written together in a way that cannot be separated. And then he cuts it. Says the Gemara, maybe he'll write Yaakov. In other words, Reuven ben Yaakov Ed was original Ed, yeah? So then he will say Yaakov Ed, yeah? And maybe that would be good enough. Says the Gemara in one of the answers, and we're now starting today's shir. No, the Gemara says no such concern, because people actually know that this is Reuven. It's not his father Yaakov. They can recognize the handwriting with Kiyum. And therefore, once there's kiyum for the handwriting, there's no chashash. If it says Yaakov and the handwriting is Reuven, no such thing. That's what we said up until now. But now we're starting today's material, Kuf Samech Aleph Amud Beis, and we're in the top of the page. Yes, I can hear a question. The shir is Le'ilu Nishmas Avimor, Menachem Ben Akiva, Ruth Bas Shalom, and Sarah Michal Bas David, Thor Bas Moshe L'Refuas, Tzvi Ben Miriam, and Shlomo Ben Rochel, B'Sorch Shachol Yisrael. Frag the Gemara in Kuf Samachalaf on base. The Dilma, maybe, Bishmei De'avua Chosam, maybe the person called Reuven really signed with his father's name. Maybe people used to give honor to the father and be like Toffel, secondary, all, submissive to the father. And he signed his name, Yaakov Ed, even though it's Reuven. And the Baal Shtar, would say, here's a star. Edim will come, and they didn't see what really went on, but they know this is Reuven's handwriting, and we all know in our village Reuven is the son of Yaakov, and then he'll say, yeah, Reuven is a very big Mechabed Av. He writes, the forger, the liar, would say, yeah, of course, yeah, it's Reuven. You know, wrote Yaakov. Oh, you don't know him? Yeah. His Mechabed uses his father's name, like, Mr. and Mrs. George Louis, whatever, Kilo, the wife is like the husband's name. So here the father is the son, is like the father's name, uses his father's name as a signature. We're in Kuf Samich Aleph Amud Beis, the top of the page. So Mimela, the forger still has a chance. He'd cut what he doesn't like. What's going to remain will be the name of his father. Yeah, Reuven Ben is cut as a forgery, as a lie, and Ben Yaakov is Yaakov the eight would stay. Why is Reuven writing like Yaakov? Oh, such a mechabed av, you have no idea. Answers the Gemara, that is not likely. That's possible, but it's very unlikely. Loi shavik inish. Shavik again means, we also learn Aramaic over here. Shavik means to leave. Right? Shavik. Shavik inish shmei didei. A person does not leave behind, does not neglect, so to speak, his own name, didei, v'chosim b'shmei da'avua, and sign his father's name. It's not accepted. It's not an accepted thing to do. Does one person do it? 1 in a million, that's nicht normal. A person called Reuven signs Reuven. Don't tell me stories that he's using his father's name as himself. Actually, in English, you said JR, right? So-and-so, and his oldest son is called JR, right? Junior, etc. But normal, this is not derech ha'olam that a person would write. His father, in a way, could be even more degrading. I'm less than my father. How can I, desecrate his name by using it for me? I can also say that. We're going to see a similar svar soon. So that's not a chashash. That's, beyond reasonable doubt, as they say. Kuf Samech Aleph Amud Beis, the third line from the top, Frag the Gemara. This is a famous and very... Shtiki Gemara, V'dilma, maybe Simona be'alma hu deshavye. Maybe he doesn't use his father's name as a name. He uses it as a siman, as a symbol. As we're going to see very soon, some of Meroim did not sign their names. They drew pictures and symbols to represent their names. That's his trademark. So maybe the person writes, his name is Reuven, father Yaakov, and he writes Yaakov, not that I am Yaakov Rubinstein, whatever. I'm writing the name Yaakov as a signature. Some people don't know how to read English, but they know that this is a very fancy kind of shirt. They know the tzura of those letters, people told me, they know that Tommy Hilfiger, they think is very fancy. They don't care about, they don't know how to pronounce it, but that tzura is a choshev azach. Let's go to Yeshiva Ktana tomorrow and have it because it's a very choshev thing. In other words, they use sometimes letters, but just as a symbol. So maybe we're really digging in. Maybe the person doesn't use his father's name as the name as text, as something phonetic, but maybe he uses it as stam, a siman, a symbol, and that maybe a person would do with his father's name. And the Gemara brings us a few examples where this was taking place. The Rav Tzayer Kavra. Rav Tanapolik, the Choshev Rav. Instead of his signature, he had his insignia. You have to pronounce the G. Insignia like a fish. He had a fish shape. Whenever you saw a document and you saw a fish with a certain shape of a fish, we knew this is Rav. Soon we'll explain this why. Rav Chanina Tzayer Charusa. Rav Chanina would make a picture, would make a symbol of a lulav or an open lulav, basically the leaf of a palm tree. Then Rav Chisda Samech. Rav Chisda would sign Samech, like the Samech of Chisda, not the Ches. There'll be like a reason. We'll see why. Rav Chisda, the Samech, just one Samech, very cool, minimalistic signature, just the Samech, Lahavdil. Then Rav Oishia Ayin. Rav Oishia would sign just with an Ayin, the letter Ayin from the middle of his name. Rav Baravuna Makuta. Rav Baravuna would sign off his name with the shape of a Makuta is either the sail or the mast. L'chor, according to Rashbam, the mast, the ship. The mast, the toren, mast, yeah, with an A, not must. Yeah, with the mast of the ship, he would actually sign like that. Rashbam says, don't get too excited. Rashbam says very litvishly and cynically, says there were no heilige kavanas. Anybody who tries to read into the inyonim here, Stam, he says maybe he liked to eat fish and he liked to eat dates and the letters and that's all, and he liked to go on a boat, obviously for good reasons. However, of course, Achronim give us deeper reasons over here, not very Kabbalistic. I once on Hasidic Sefer, like very deep things, which I didn't understand about these, but I saw here in the Achronim, I saw in the back of the Gemara, a few explanations. Either, first of all, the Marshal says, Rav, it says in the Gemara in Shabbos, Kuf Yutesish, it says there the Rav would prepare the fish for Shabbos. That's why. That was like his signature mitzvah. Preparing the fish for Shabbos, that is very Hasidic. A fish for Shabbos. And what? And Rav Chanina would like to eat dates on Shabbos. The other ones he doesn't say. Another explanation of one of the Avitz, maybe one of the Achronim in the back I saw, he says all these signatures or insignias, they basically represent authority. Authority. Yeah, it says the fish, I don't know if the fish is really authority. The fish is, there's no Ein Hora. The deck, it doesn't say about the fish, but the other ones is authority. The Charusa, the dekel, it says it's Tzadik Katomer Yifrach, and Charus is like a stick that they would hit with. You know, it would be like some kind of showing authority, because instead of a club that the police uses, this would be like the Ale Dekel would be something to show authority and wisdom together. Give me a second. And the other one, the Samech, why Samech? Listen, a cool thing. Why Samech Dafka from Rav Chizda? You can be Somech Alai, Smoch. You can be soimech, you can rely on me that when I sign with the document, I know what I'm talking about. It's not Gaiva. He wants to show other Eidim that when you sign something, be aware of what you're signing, so people should be able to rely on you, as opposed to today in Israel, it's almost a joke. When they say smoch alai, it means you cannot rely on the person. Smoch alai, smoch. So Rav Chizda can really be soimech on him. What's ayin or voishya ayin? Ayin because he was me'ayen. He really looked into the star before he signed it. Yeah, not like you go to some, low-life guy and he tells you, just sign over here, sign over the dotted line without knowing you're signing. He was really me'ayin very well into the star, and then, and only then, he really signed the star. What's Makuta? And the ship again, when the ship goes, a captain of the ship, yeah, the ship is a place where the captain, the Rav Chovel, he's the one who's in charge. And that again showed authority, because these people were the authority in their communities and they had to live by that. So let me just summarize the question. So how do you know that if the person cut the last line and the only thing that was left is his father's name, and we say, what, a son signing his father's name? We recognize that this is Reuven's handwriting and it says Yaakov. No, says the Shakran. Of course, well, look, a lot of people sign all kinds of kivyochol, Khalila, weird things. So he signs Yaakov as like, boom, as like a signature, like a logo, like the logo of the shop. Yeah, let's say there's a very fancy, Japanese shop, and we don't read Japanese. It would also be the same. We know that this symbol means that. We don't read it. Same thing, maybe he uses Yaakov as that. Give me a second. And says the Gemara, a person doesn't have the chutzpah, or in English, chutzpah, to sign his father's name to make it into a symbol. It's actually something that's degrading. Text is more choshuv than just a symbol. It's text, it's meaningful. There's vowels and there's consonants there. To make his father's name into a symbol is actually taking one level lower, and that a person, becheskas, wouldn't do. Of course, maybe some would, but the chakran wouldn't be able to go to Beis Din and claim that as a viable taina. Thank you, Peretz, for your patience. Thank you. True. I think Rashman mentions it also. Nachon, true. Peretz is making a good point that many times those signatures with those insignias were on their ring. And there's also again Shabbos and in Avodah Zarah, right? Avodah Zarah especially, we had a person has a ring, some of them would be 3D sticking out, protruding, some of them would be the other way, and Chanavi. Yes, thank you. Makes sense that this would be in the ring. So maybe he has Yaakov in his ring from his father. We say no, he doesn't use his father's name. That's not covered. If anything, it's the other way. Okay, now comes the Gemara with another suggestion, and that deals with the question that you asked yesterday, Jeffrey. Malzuta Omar. Malzuta comes into the picture and says one clear thing. Lama lach kuli hai. Why are you getting into trouble? This whole discussion about how to avoid the sheker, how to avoid a person from cutting the bottom line, right? And he remains with half a name of an ed. You're going to a lot of trouble here. This chotze finish, no chotze finish, the whole thing. It's been a whole discussion. I have a simpler solution. Yeah. And he says, "Kol mekusha she'en edov kolin b'shito achas." Any get mekusha that the edim do not finish off together in the same line, pasul is pasul. What does that mean? There are three explanations. Marzutra is definitely suggesting a simpler solution. First option is Rashbam, and I saw the Ritva explaining the Rashbam and then disagreeing with him. Rashbam says, "You're choishesh that Reuven would start here." What did we understand up until now? Reuven starts here. After that comes another one, and then another one. They're in line. Yeah, one following the other, like a nice queue. Yeah, he says, no, really all three are parallel. They all start in the bottom of the page here in the back. Yeah, Reuven ben Shimon, and Shimon ben Yankelevich, and Yankelevich ben Safta. Yeah, all three Edim are in the bottom of the page. Okay, so... and therefore parallel with each other, and they cover enough ground. And they do have to go, they probably have to sign it very widespread. They have to start together, and according to one opinion, finish together. They have to be very, very well planned and artistic, the way they sign, start in the bottom, and then climb up here, all three signatures together. So then, if you would cut the name of Reuven ben and would be left with Yaakov, he would also have to cut off Shimon ben, and also Naphtali ben, v'chule. So, says, and here the Rashbam finishes off, Zokta Ritzva, that would look too suspicious. Even if you believe that people do use their father's names, and you don't have to come to all these psychological terutzim, chotzif, not chotzif, even you can say about one person, but you want to tell me all three people signed the father's name, that's too much already, mister. We require in get mekusha of three, not two. Three people, punkt, all have this shtick of signing just the father's name. That would not be so likely and so credible by Beis Din. That's one answer.
That's the Ritva?
That's the Ritva explaining the Rashbam, but then he says he thinks it's dochuk. Now, he doesn't say why. Another pshat in the Rishonim is like this, similar to Rashbam, and they say like this. Usually, I chose Reuven, Shimon, Naphtali. They all have 5 letters in their names. But let's say one guy is called Dan, and the other one is called Klonimus Kalman Zalman. Ben Rachamim Chaim Yichye. So, yeah, the guy who goes up to the Torah and the Gabbai breaks his teeth to say his name. What did they think in the bris? I don't know. He had 10 Zaydis and was born after 10 girls. So yeah, all the Zaydis names have to be him, right? Like overdose of names. So one guy is called Dan. He's a cool guy from Tel Aviv. His name is Dan or Gad or Tal, and it's Baal Tshuva. Tal ben Ram. And the other one is Klonimus Kalman ben Yechiel Michal Shushu, whatever. And the third one somewhere in between. Wait a second. If you cut the last line and you cut Dan, then you still have other letters left in the other names. The other names will be cut in the middle of the name. Klonimus Kalman will be cut in the middle, will be the Monimus Kalman. Therefore, that is the problem. It's very unlikely for a person to cut the names and be left punct symmetrically with everyone's Ben so-and-so. Many, many times, yeah, the names would be not exactly the same. A third answer, which claims to be much simpler, I think Rashba, I'm getting confused from all the shining. I think it's Rashba. He says very, 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 very simple answer, which Jeffrey is going to like. And he says like this, in the bottom of the page, normal, clear, horizontally, look, horizontal throughout the last line. That's where you sign all 3 names. It's that simple. They're not climbing up. What was the whole vote of climbing up? That they saw the text, Azma. Just like normally Edim have to sign in the front, in the bottom, and that shows that that's it. They have to sign in the very bottom, as we see, and that shows that they saw everything. What's the get mekusher business? That they sign in the back. Why? I don't know. Maybe to show connection to the kishur, to the back. But basically, that's it. In other words, they sign here in the the back, and that shows that they saw everything here, and they're signing one next to the other, and he cannot cut the last line. He cannot cut the last line anyways, because then he'll cut all three chasimas. You ever get a star without edim? Even a typish kit aleph knows that's not a good star. And that's one answer. So we have three answers for the three chasimas. In any event, the Gemara gave us a very nice security system, mechanism, to show that the person is not very unlikely. Nothing is always, iron-proof, but basically there is no probable chance that he's going to cut the last part of the star, even if the text there is not to his liking. Yes, another round of questions, and then you can. Okay, let's continue now. Kuf Samech Aleph Amud Beis. Short amudim. We managed to do daf yomi instead of amud yomi. 4 lines before the bottom of the page. It's not a new topic. It's a new statement regarding the previous topic. Baruch Hashem. Amar B'Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Kol hamechakin kulan. Any erased part that's kosher, tzorich shichtov v'dein kiyumayhun. End of line. Which means he's telling us halacha. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Rabbi Yochanan. Remember that sometimes a person is allowed to erase a part of a star. When would that be? Remember? If it's not a potential, hakol shol v'kayom. If I see a star and I'm a dayan, you better be an aid before the dayan, and I see that it says hakol shol v'kayom, that means that's it. There is nothing beyond and that point. Nothing can be changed. And then I can sign maybe I'll add later on in the bottom of the page. It'll be irrelevant. Whatever you add after, let's say it says a kol shel v'kayim, whatever you write afterwards is just, flowery things. It's not, nothing's going to change. So if you write any condition, any new condition, any chiddush of a condition that wasn't there before, nobody will listen to you. The Gemara said maybe you erase shol v'kayim and write all these fantasies, that this is in condition, give me 10 million, and then write a new hakol shol v'kayim. We said it's not a chashash because you can't erase a kol shol v'kayim because any erased point, any rubbed off point with new text on it where kol shol v'kayim could have been written is possible to throw it in the garbage. However, let's say a person did have mechika in a place where you could not logically write a kol shol v'kayim. I gave an example. Reuven, Pafarovsky Ben Shimon, I am selling my field to, and then it's erased. And another name is there. Maybe just selling to another guy. Maybe it was a kol shol v'kayim. Of course not. You can't say I'm selling my field to a kol shol v'kayim. A kol shol v'kayim, even in Israel, with all the modern names, there's no such name. It's not a person's name, of course, So therefore, if it's in the middle of the excitement of the text, that's not a place suitable for kol shol v'kayim, and therefore, that place you can erase. However, says the Gemara, I'm reading again the Gemara, kol mechakin kulan, any erased part which could be kosher, tzorich shichtov v'dein kiyumayun. The edim, before they sign in the last line, and we're going to discuss the last line today, they have to verify and write. We have seen mechika number 1 in the top of the page in that line, and it's okay. We approve of it. Again, we approve of the erased part in line number 4. There are lines. There are usually 12 lines in a get. We approve of this and that. In other words, very meticulously, they have to write, we have seen and are aware of all the mechikas, describing the mechikas. I'm a dayan now, coming to Beis Din because one side claims it's forged, and I'm checking it. And if I see that there's one mechika, even a kosher mechika, not kol shel v'kayim, but that mechika is not approved, is not verified at the end by the edim, the shtar is treif. Why? Says Rashban, very simple, because if it's not verified, then of course the edim will sign in the bottom, but then he'll erase whatever he wants, right? Imagine yourself a Word document with Chasima Seidim somehow. That's a joke. A Word document, not PDF. You change whatever you want. You can change the amounts, I can play the whole thing over there, manipulate it completely. And then Mimele, it's a chashash. Yeah, of course, very nice, the signatures at the end, but you don't know the chronology. They signed the kosher star, and then the guy, the loive, or let's say the malve, the malve holds the star. He'll add another 0. Cute. No, it's not 10,000, another 0. 100,000. What a cool thing, mechika. And therefore, it doesn't work. If you see a mechika on the amount, of course, you have to make sure that the edim are made before, and the edim also have to be verified. That's the simple part of the halacha. Now comes another halacha, another way to avoid forgery. A person, and now we're going to Ellen's question about the gap. Here comes the gap. Says the Gemara as follows. I'm just translating and then I'm explaining. A person has to give a summary of the shtar in the last line. The last line, which is, let's say, they're not so clearly seen in YouTube yet. Yeah, the line, let's say this is the last line. The content of the last line must always be a summary, a synopsis of things that were written before in the shtar, as opposed to chidushim. You want to write a new condition, you want to write all the above is true only if she gives me $1 million from a rich father's account. You want to write that? That's nice. Never ever write it in the last line. Don't write it in the last line. My time, before the Gemara goes on, the Rashbam already tells us, and then I'll read the Rashbam in Kuf Samach Beis inside. Rashbam says the follows. Eidim, I didn't write with the Eidim sign because it's also debatable. Let's say the Eidim sign in the very bottom. Yeah, let's do it with a marker. The Eidim sign here, here, and here. And by the way, this is true not only by Mekusha. Who asked the question? You asked the question. This, what we're going to say now, applies also to regular get. A regular get has the Eidim in the bottom. A shtar Mekusha has them on the top, either here or here for the Ritva, or down here in the back. But a regular shtar, yeah, these three lines that we have in the very bottom, they represent the Eidim. Now, for reasons of aesthetics, usually the Eidim don't sign very, very close to the bottom of the text. There's some space between the signatures, and that is the last empty line. Yeah, between the signatures and the last written line, there is a space, and that space is called the last line. It's an empty space. Now they signed it. Mr. Schwindler, liar, Shakran, what is he going to do? He's going to add, and he can still manage to do it nicely. We'll discuss later how aesthetic it can be. Let's say it's his own handwriting, or can forge the handwriting very nicely of the Sofer, and he would add in that space between the real text and the signatures, in that empty space, is going to add a lot of things, you know. The entire thing is only in condition, that is going to give me whatever. Therefore, we say the following. The last line is never believed to have the words, the above is in condition. You can never add things that will change the essence of the shtar in the last line. And that's one security measure. That's the word, security measure. Security measure is don't believe new stuff in the last line. You have a shtar where the last line is writing a whole new thing. We don't know. Maybe he edited it because they left too much space and used the space to write his own fantasies. What happens if you write new information in the last line? Machloikes mechaber, not machloikes mechaber and Ramo. Actually, we'll see the halacha tomorrow. Basically, some people say that the entire shtar is treif. Yeah, a shtar that has new info instead of summarizing the old info. Treif. You're going against the Konas Chachamim. Take it. Nowadays, there's a very fancy thing in the past, 30, 40 years, shredder. Put it in the shredder, and that's it. That's what you can do. Others say no. Others say it's a kosher shtar, but just don't accept what it says in the last line. If the last line says, and only there it says, not before, it says all of a sudden surprising news, all of a sudden at the end of the shtar, he remembers to write that the whole story is only true if Mr. Rabinovsky will give me $10,000 a month, then we'll say, okay, but we just don't believe that line. The rest of the shtar could be good. Why should we ruin it for both of them? The last line, that part, we censor. We don't accept it. We'll see it in the Lochim Yirtzeh Hashem tomorrow. Rosh Chodesh, Simcha. But this is what we say. B'shita Achroino. Yeah? Sorry, tomorrow's Erev Rosh Chodesh. Okay. Continues the Gemara, my time. What's the reason? I sort of already gave you the reason, but the Gemara will do a better job than me. Amar of Amram, Kuf Samach Beis Amud Aleph in the top of the page. Amar of Amram, Lefi she'en l'meidin B'shita Achroino, which means you do not learn. Learn meaning you don't derive new information from the last line. Why? Because what I just told you. We're now talking to a good guy who's not a chakra and says, oy vavai, why can't I write the condition in the last line? Now our shtar is ruined. Bezin won't accept it. So say, really, it's for your safety, because we're scared of shakronim, and they would stick a text in that empty line, in the gap, mind the gap. That'll be today's talk. Mind the gap, it's dangerous. Mind the gap in the get. Yeah, they would use that empty line to add new information, and that could be sheker. That's why we said the last line should never give us new info. You're an MSDK guy? Good. Make sure all the conditions and all the new stuff that you want to inform us with should be to the second, the penultimate line, or before, another last line. Now, before we continue, big machlokes rishonim here. I'll just give you one general opinion, which is like a pshara. The Rashbam says that the only time we need to actually be aware of that ziyuf of the last line, the last empty line, is only if it does not say hakol shor v'kayim. If it says hakol shor v'kayim, then we don't have such an issue. Why? Because let's say it says hakol shor v'kayim here, not in the very bottom. We're scared of that line, the empty one. Let's say it says somewhere here hakol shor v'kayim, and there he's adding new stuff. Is the new stuff believed? No. Hakol shor v'kayim, maybe it's stupidity, a mistake, it just doesn't work. It says here, hakol shor v'kayim in the fourth line from the bottom, and afterwards it says, only if he gives me an extra million. Stupidity, maybe, yeah, but it's not traced, because it's just anything past the hakol shor v'kayim, no, we don't care about, right? So then we don't care about the last line. We have an alternative security measure. The Rishonim argue with the Rashbam, and they say, ma pitom. Maybe the person can erase the first hakol shor v'kayim, right? And write a new hakol shor v'kayim in the bottom. What are you guys going to tell me?
Where the old one was, then at his
okay, no, but is that a chashash? Maybe a kol shor v'kayim. If we erase a kol shor v'kayim and we write a kol shor, we said
you'll be able to see the erasure.
What?
It assumes you'll be able to see the erasure.
And if you see the erasure without kiyum, it will be possible. Very good. Very good. So now the Rishonim says as follows. If you have a place where everyone must write a kol shor v'kayim, then it's true. He will erase the first kol shor v'kayim, have a second kol shor v'kayim, they won't accept it. If you see a kol shor v'kayim in the bottom and not in the top, and we know a kol shor v'kayim has to be somewhere, then we're concerned, red light blinking. Maybe the erased piece over here is a kol shor v'kayim. It fits those three words in space and in context and in context. Yeah, and erase, and then in the bottom, that's strafe. Mimela, then the Rashbam is right, and they agree with the Rashbam. But let's say there's a place people don't write the kol shor v'kayim. Then what? And he writes a kol shor v'kayim here in the bottom, right? And that erased part would not be an issue, because maybe that was something else written. Stam, 1,000. Instead of 1,000, wrote 2,000, yeah? And people are not aware b'chlal the kol shor v'kayim is a requirement. I would actually go into that in halacha tomorrow. That's a bit more complicated. Leave the kol shor v'kayim in the corner now, but let's just stick with the Rashbam. Rashbam says that the last line, not to have anything new in the last line, is only an issue if you don't have shor v'kayim. If shor v'kayim is there, that's another way of knowing that there is no chidushim past the kol shor v'kayim. I would hear a question now, and then we'll continue this. Let's just summarize in a much simpler way. Imagine yourself, there are two ways to end off a star in a way that after that point, there's no point of no return. Either a kol shor v'kayim, and that can be anywhere in the shtar, and after that, I don't care what you write. You can have gaps, you can have new stories, I don't care. Chashash, there's no chashash, it's past shor v'kayim. Now, without all the details, which we'll discuss tomorrow. Another way is without shor v'kayim, then the end of story are the signatures. They are the dead end. They're the end of story. And then we have an issue. If you have an empty space, or even without an empty space, dafka you have everything written very nicely, and the last line all of a sudden tells you new information, then we're concerned that originally there was a gap left, and that gap he filled in with his own shtuyot and lies, and then came the Eidim. They didn't come afterwards. It looks like they signed afterwards. Really, they signed before. He filled in the line after the Eidim went home. Yeah, he went and he filled in whatever he wants. Therefore, the other optional end of story, instead of shor v'kayim, are the signatures. Apparently, different places, different minogim. Today, we write the kol shor v'kayim, such as we do in Ksuba, in the middle. Frag the Gemara, Kuf Samach Beis Amud Aleph, Omer Rav Nachman Rav Amram, second line, Mino Lacho. How do you know that? Makes sense what you say, very logical, but do you have a source? Mishnah Brisa? Omer Le, yes. The Tanya, it says in the Brisa, Here Edin Shnei Shitin Min Aksav Posel, Ellen. He made a distance, a gap of 2 lines from the Ksav, which means between the last written line and the Adim's signature, there are two empty lines. And that's what comes to base, in two empty spaces, there are lines. I'm not making a mistake because they would score two lines. It's a klaf, like a Sefer Torah. As far as I know, in Gittin also, and in Stars, they make like lines, scoring line. So if you have two empty lines, and then the signature, that star is treif. Even if nothing is written there, we'll explain why. Also, we understand why. Maybe it's going to add new stuff. Nachon? Yeah, he already gave it to Beis Din. Okay, I'll tell you now. Says Rashbam. Rashbam says over here, look at the first wide line, very stark Rashbam. Here he can say shnei shitim neksav posul. Im en kosuv boy shorir v'kayim. Again, if it's a star that's more susceptible to lies because it doesn't say shorir v'kayim. Afilu im yesh edim shelo noisach bo dvar ziyuf. Let's say we know that there's nothing of ziyuf that is added there. Let's say we know by edus the edim samaduno no ziyuf. It's a kosher star, happens to have two empty lines. Mikol mokom hay star, that star chaspa be'almahu. Chaspa be'alma is always mentioned in Chazal. It's like a piece of clay. Excuse my English, a piece of garbage. Clay was always like the cheres hanishbar, as we say in Sanatoykef. Star chaspa be'alma is a useless star. The star is treif. Why? You did not create it as Chachamim established, which means even if you're the biggest Gadol Hador and the other guy is the biggest Gadol Hador, the Admor Hador, and you gave a star, which wouldn't happen, but you gave a star, well, you're not liars, but you presented a star of two empty lines, because that star invites treifkeit, invites to itself forgery and lies. Mimela, because you can add a lot of shtuyot in the two lines. Mimela, that star became treif. I am an honest guy, and if Eidim Elio Novi came and said that this is good, lo meshane. You go against Eidus Techonos Chachamim. Mimela, the star became a treif chefza. Sadidin in a ma'isa, lomdis. Sadidin matzidin the chefza. That chefza became treif. It's an illegal format. You always have the nicer words. Very good. You say. And says Lashbam, unbelievable. Kemilve al pe damia. We know there was a milva. We know that there are Eidim present. Okay, it's like milva al peh. We know there was a milva, but the star is treif. What is it? Ki'ilu, there's no star, but there's a milva. In Chinese, it's called milva al peh, which means it's ki'ilu, you only had the milva without any star, which means, yes, he owes you the money because there are Eidim, and we know, and you're two honest people. But Lamai said, what's the difference between the milva b'shtam milva b'al peh la'alocha? Quick, on the draw. No, what's the difference between a milva b'shtar or milva b'al peh? Regarding claiming from the Chosim Mishubadim.
You need Eidim to come.
La halacha after the Eidim. You cannot claim from the Chosim Mishubadim. If it's a milva bal peh, then he owes you the money from himself, even the shirt off his back, the Gemara said. But you can't touch a lens that he sold other people. It's bal peh. Even though you can say there was a call, lo meshaneh, call shmo. Bal peh, you can't claim from innocent buyers, and you cannot tell the buyer beware because it's bal peh. Mashenk and milva b'shtar, which is kosher, you can go to people who bought the land, the mortgaged land off the borrower, and claim it from them. You are the lender. Please. Yeah, we're in the shmung. So now, listen carefully. Here he can say, we're back in the Gemara now. Shnei shitim neksav posul. Shita achas kosher. But if you only left one blank line, that's the word. One blank line is left between the Eidim and the text, that is okay. Frag the Gemara, why? What's the difference? Maishna shnei shitin. Why do you disqualify the star with the two empty lines, empty spaces, deal mimizai for kosav, because he can write a lot of stuff in the last two lines, and then look, there are signatures of Kanevsky. If so, shito achas nami mizai for kosav. One line, it can also be mizayif. Same thing, less stuff, but still one line, you can add a lot of zeros, and a lot of, ice cream parlors I want, yeah? Elalav must be shmamino, and lemedi mishita achroina shmamino. From here we learn, no. From here, Gufa, we can derive that you cannot learn new information of the last line, which means, what's your big chashash? If there's one empty space, maybe you'll take the empty space and feel, it's a husband divorcing the wife, only she gives me 2 million and v'chule and does this and that. It's time, Shalom, but again, yeah, in one last line, you could write it, but it would be possible because we don't believe new information on the last line. Mashenkin, if you have two empty spaces, then of course you can be Meshaker. You have two empty spaces. In the second to last, in the penultimate line, he'll add another extra million, as agreed. And then in the last line, he'll write a very nice, frum, good, sikum. You're right. He's not a stupid guy. You know, he learned Bava Basra. In the second to last, he'll add Yachnis La. He'll add a lot of good conditions for him, complete lies. And in the very last line, he said, he knows we don't learn from Shita Achroino, from the last line. He'll add as summarized and as we discussed before. Mimela, we say from here, we know from this brisa, we indirectly, but rather clearly see that the issue is always with the last line. Therefore, the last line must not have new information, but only old information repeated and summarized in synopsis. That's all. Masha'enk in the second or third or fourth, then in a chanami. So if you have two empty spaces, it's strafe because two empty spaces is outside our security mechanism, security measure, and then mimela the star is strafe. You can be the biggest yosher, the other guy is the biggest yosher. It's a strafe star. In a way, give me a second, because similarly, not the best example, this is the Rabbanon. Where do we see the Oraisa? You have a treifa kind of item you can't have in your house for similar reasons. Mishkolos of shekel, right? You can't have, Purim is coming, and you think it's very sticky, to have one of these old weights, which I remember as a child, the big black ones, and it's, it's engraved in it, or embossed in it, 1 kilo, and really it's not 1 kilo, really it's 990, let's say, grams. Very funny, so then it's not it's a funny Purim joke. No, it's strafe to have it in your house, even if you're not going to use it, because it's a sheker. Hashem hates sheker in every shape or form. It's a treifa chefza. That's it. Same thing with a star. The star is in an illegal format, and therefore, you have 2 more minutes. Ibailahu. Now comes the question of the Gemara with interesting explanation of the Rishonim. Ibailahu. They had a question. Shita umechza mai. What about if you have 1 line and a half empty between the written lines and the edim, 1.5. The Rishonim mai, and then the Gemara is going to start explaining what is the halacha, and the Gemara is actually quite simple. But first of all, the Rishonim are raking their heads. Tosfos, Ritva, they say, what's going on over here? What do you mean 1 line, 1.5 lines? Let's say that here, you have, I'll draw it. Let's say you have 1 written line here. Let's say this is 1 written line, and you still have half space and half empty. Of course, it's a problem. What's a shaila? In half a line, you can add a lot. Half a line you can add. It's a big wide star. You can add a few zeros. Kiyad hadimian hatoiva. Of course, what's the question? I'm even minimizing their question. They go back and forth. The Maskon of Ritva and Tosfos is fascinating. They say 1.5 doesn't mean width-wise. It means the space here. The space between the lines. English speakers, anybody who talks English? In Hebrew, machberet and glit means what? That you have 1 narrow line and 1 wider one for all the things that stick up. The L that sticks up and the P that sticks down. That's for every Israeli child. Machberet ivrit means the one that all the lines are the same, and glit is what, for sure. That was since childhood. You had to buy 3 machberot, and glit, cheshbon, and the other one. And so mimela, there are spaces between the lines. Let's say the space between the signatures and the written stuff is 1.5 width-wise. Like in the computer, you can play around with it. So then the question is, do we say that the space, is not 2 lines? Is 2 lines is treif. 1 line is kosher, but 1.5 width-wise. Do we say that it'll squeeze in the letters, or maybe squeezing in the letters is not going to look very, very reliable, very credible? You see that it's stuck in the text, yes or no? How much are we choshesh to forgery and to Beis being able to deal with something which is, not comfortably written, nicely and widely, but also not very, very tzafuf, not very dense. It's 1.5. Can he or can he not? Are we choshesh it'll stick in new information to something that's between 1 line and 2 lines? 2 lines is treif, 1 line is not. That's a chash. Can he add more lines and then do the sikum? He'll have in the half he'll add another $1 million and then have a little sikum at the end after that. Is it a chash or no? Don't say yes or no. The Gemara will tell us tomorrow. Suspense, cliffhanger. What's going to be with the 1.5 lines? Okay, sure is officially over. Thank you very, very much. Tizkul mitzvah, shkoyach. Have a nice ride. Shlomo.